This video covers operation of Snorkel aerial platforms with maximum platform heights from 37 feet to 85 feet. The number part of the model designation indicates the ground-to-platform height. These versatile aerial platforms are available in two-wheel and four-wheel drive models with gasoline or diesel engines and in dual-fuel versions. Weight-saving aluminum booms, powerful engines, and high-torque drive motors combine to produce a high power-to-weight ratio for negotiating all types of job site conditions. They should be operated only by a trained operator. This video focuses on Snorkel aerial platform operation. It is not designed to replace reading the operator's manual for your specific machine. Prior to operation, you should be thoroughly familiar with the operator's manual and receive proper hands-on instruction from a qualified trainer. You also need to know OSHA and any other federal, state, or local regulations concerning operation and the use of safety devices such as fall restraints. And of course, you should always dress appropriately and wear proper safety protection gear when operating any equipment and on any job site. There are three major hazards of any aerial platform: electrocution, crushing, and tip-over. Following the procedures in the operator's manual and this video will help guard against them. Advanced knowledge of the specifics of the machine you will be operating and its controls, gauges, and safety devices are important, as is knowledge of the safety decals and placards. These matters are covered in detail in the operator's manual, which also contains component identification and an operator's troubleshooting guide. The operator's manual shows all the safety-related placards and decals on the machine and where they are placed. When you see warnings like these, heed them precisely. Snorkel aerial platforms have two control panels: a lower panel located on the turntable and an upper control panel at the platform. Control panel appearance varies slightly from model to model. Consult your operator's manual for the details on the machine you are using. Thoroughly familiarize yourself with all controls and gauges before attempting to operate the machine. The battery disconnect switch is located near the battery. If this switch is turned off, there is no electrical power and the machine will not operate. The battery disconnect switch should never be turned off with the engine running, as damage could occur to the electrical system components. Some machines have extendable axles that must be deployed before the boom can be raised. The axle controls are at the rear of the chassis. Snorkel aerial platforms can be started from either of the control panels. The lower control panel switch requires a key. If your machine is diesel-powered or has the dual fuel feature, check your manual for any special starting instructions. The lower control panel has all switches necessary for operating the machine from the ground. These include the boom elevation switch, boom extension switch, turntable rotation switch, platform rotate switch, platform leveling switch, and on jib-equipped models, the jib articulation control. The machine cannot be driven or steered from this control panel. The panel also has an emergency stop switch that is either a toggle switch with a red cover or a red emergency stop button, a selector switch that determines which control panel is active, and a ground operation switch that must be held upward while operating the controls on the lower control panel. Also, on extendable axle machines, there is an axle boom switch that is used to select either axle or boom operation. The panel also includes engine temperature and ammeter gauges, and may include a circuit reset button. The wiring box may also have circuit breaker reset buttons, as well as an emergency power switch. Controls for operating the machine from the platform are located at the upper control panel. Controls on this panel generally duplicate the ones on the lower control panel. However, boom up and down and turntable rotation is controlled with a joystick instead of toggle switches. The control for drive and steer functions is also a joystick. Separate controls determine engine speed and boom speed. There is also a drive range switch. A switch for the emergency power system is also in this panel. The platform foot switch must be held down while operating the platform or drive controls. Do not step on the foot switch while you are trying to start the engine. TB80 FA and 85J FA machines also have a four-wheel drive high-range speed selector on the upper control panel that works with the other controls to determine the maximum drive speed. Snorkel aerial platforms have a number of special alarms and safety devices that must be working when the machine is in use. Check each of them as part of your daily inspection. The emergency stop switches on the lower and upper control panels stop the entire machine immediately anytime they are pressed. The engine turns off and nothing moves. On the upper control panel, the emergency stop is a large red button. Once it is pressed, you will need to pull it back outward before you can restart the engine. The emergency stop switch on the lower controls works similarly. Raise the toggle switch or pull the emergency stop button outward before restarting. These TB models have two audio alarms, a tilt alarm and an engine protection system alarm. This sound indicates an automatic engine shutoff condition, high engine temperature, low oil pressure, or that the alternator is not charging the battery. While operating the machine, if this alarm sounds, shut off the engine and correct the problem. The tilt alarm makes a warbling sound, warning that the machine is out of level and a tipping hazard exists. When it sounds, you must immediately retract and lower the boom completely and drive the machine to a firm, level surface. With those basics behind us, let's move on to operating the aerial platform. Safe operation begins with a pre-start inspection of the machine and the working area. A qualified person needs to check all the items in the manual's pre-start inspection checklist. The inspection site must have a smooth and level surface. As you start, turn the battery disconnect switch to the on position and pull the emergency stop button outward. Make sure that none of the circuit breakers are tripped. Put the selector switch on the lower control panel in the lower control position. You will need to check the fluid levels and for leaks of fuel, engine oil, coolant, hydraulic oil, and for any other leaks. Be sure to check all gauges and the battery, and the spare emergency power battery if the machine has one. If you are not sure how to do those things, complete instructions are included in the operator's manual. You will need to check for any structural damage, loose bolts, or broken welds, and inspect the slide pads and the surfaces they contact, and the wire ropes if the machine is so equipped. The boom will have to be extended approximately 1 foot to make sure all the slide pads are in place. Check the tires and wheels for signs of damage, and make sure all of the safety features are in good condition. Start the engine from the lower controls and let the engine warm up. On dual fuel models, if you start in the LP mode, the shutoff valve on the LP gas tank must be open. Now, check those gauges and functions that require that the engine be running. If your machine has extendable rear axles, the first function you should check is the axle safety interlock. Go to the rear of the machine and make sure the footing underneath it is firm enough to support the weight of the machine. Make sure the control selector switch is in the lower controls position, and put the boom axle switch in the axle position. With the axles retracted and the locking pin in place, operate the boom raise and extend controls. The safety interlock should prevent the boom from elevating more than a few degrees above horizontal, and the boom should only extend approximately 1 foot. Hold the jack lever in the raise position until the wheels are off the ground and the jack stops moving. Remove the pin lock and pin. Hold the axle lever in the extend position until the axles fully extend. The axles will extend one at a time. Replace the pin and pin lock. If the pin is difficult to replace, cycle the axle control lever back and forth while exerting force on the pin. Once the pin is in place, lower the machine back to the ground by holding the jack lever in the lower position. Return to the control panel and set the selector to boom. The boom should operate normally. Remove the pin again and attempt to operate the boom. The boom again should be capable of only slight movement. With the pin still out, try to operate the jack. The jack should not operate. Then, replace the pin and continue your inspection. At the lower control panel, with the lower controls selected, hold the ground operation switch up and operate the controls to make sure each function works in both directions. We'll demonstrate these controls in the next section of this video. When testing the turntable rotation function, pushing the switch to turn it in the clockwise direction will rotate the turntable toward you, so make sure you have room to step out of the way. You can test the tilt alarm by raising the boom and then manually moving the level sensor to the side as far as you can. Test the emergency lowering knob or emergency bleed down valve to make sure it will allow the boom to lower. Check the emergency stop switch. When you press it in, the engine will turn off and all functions will stop. Pull the switch outward. Next, test the emergency power system. Hold the emergency power switch in the emergency position and the ground operation switch upward. You should now be able to operate the aerial platform on emergency power. Once you have verified that the emergency power works, release the emergency power switch and start the engine. Now, set the control selector switch to Upper Controls and inspect and operate the controls on the upper control panel in the same way you tested the lower controls. Finally, make sure the proper operator's manual is in the manual holder and that all decals and placards are clean and in good condition. The other phase of your safety inspection is inspecting the work area. You need to be aware of whether there will be other persons in the area and whether there will be vehicles present. Some very important things you must check on are the presence of electrical hazards, tipping hazards, and hazardous conditions caused by materials such as flammable liquids and other combustibles. Be alert for anything overhead that the platform could run into or could cause a head or crushing injury. Be aware of wind and weather conditions that could increase tipping hazards. Snorkel aerial platforms are not electrically insulated and are not designed to protect the operator from electrocution. Always observe safe approach distances for electrical conductors. If the boom or platform comes in contact with electrical wires, do not attempt to operate the lower controls until the power is turned off. Before using the aerial platform in any location that has been classified as hazardous, make certain that it is approved and of the type required by ANSI NFPA 505 for use in that particular location. Observe all other safety rules and best practices, such as never allowing riders and never operating a machine that is not operating properly. Remember that all platform occupants must wear fall restraint devices connected to a lanyard anchor point. With the pre-start inspection completed and any extendable axles properly deployed, let's look at how to operate the machine. All boom and platform motion functions can be activated from the lower control panel. Caution: soft soil or unstable conditions under the machine can add to tipping hazards. Make sure the machine is on a firm, level surface. Never exceed the rated platform capacity. If the engine is not already running, make sure the battery disconnect switch is on. No circuit breakers are tripped, and the emergency stop switch is pulled outward. Then, turn the start switch to on. If the switch is left in on for more than 30 seconds, you may have to turn it off again before you turn it to the start position. To operate the machine from the lower control panel, the lower controls must be selected, and you must hold the ground operation switch upward while activating the controls. Moving the main boom switch to up will cause the boom to elevate. Moving the switch to down lowers the boom. If movement is sluggish and the ambient temperature is below about 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Celsius, the hydraulic oil probably needs warming. Some machines have a hydraulic oil warm-up switch. Moving the turntable rotation switch to clockwise rotates the turntable clockwise when viewed from above. Remember, clockwise rotates toward you. Counterclockwise rotates it counterclockwise as viewed from above. When the boom extension switch is moved to extend, the telescoping boom extends. Retract retracts the boom. On booms with jibs, the jib articulation switch up position moves the jib upward. Down moves the jib down. Moving the platform rotate switch to clockwise rotates the platform clockwise as seen from above. The counterclockwise position moves it counterclockwise. Moving the platform level switch to up tilts the platform floor upward or away from the ground, and down tilts the platform floor downward toward the ground. To operate the machine from the upper controls, first make sure the selector on the lower control panel is set to the upper controls position. Then enter the platform. Make sure the gate is closed, and fasten your fall restraint device to the lanyard anchor point. Controls on the upper control panel duplicate those on the lower control panel. Also, only on the upper control panel there are additional controls for driving and steering the machine. Check to make sure that the emergency stop switch is pulled upward and no circuit breakers are tripped. The engine must be running to operate the machine, so if it has been turned off, start it from the upper control panel using the same procedure we used from the lower controls. Remember, the foot switch must be depressed for the machine to operate, but never let up on the foot switch when the machine is in motion. This will cause a sudden stop and possibly an injury. It is best to drive between work areas with the boom lowered and in a position where it does not interfere with your field of vision. On jib models, with the boom lowered and the jib elevated enough to provide adequate ground clearance, make sure it does not obstruct your field of view. An aerial platform will tip over if it becomes unstable. Death or serious injury can result from a tip-over accident. Do not drive an elevated platform on soft, uneven, or sloping surfaces. Do not drive the machine on grades that exceed the machine's gradability, as stated in the operator's manual. When driving on grades within the machine's gradability, keep the main boom near horizontal. If there is a jib, elevate it just enough to provide adequate ground clearance. The blue and yellow arrows on the chassis indicate the direction the chassis will move when the drive or steer control is moved toward the corresponding color. When the machine is in the stowed position with the boom centered between the rear wheels, the direction of the steer control movement corresponds with the direction of chassis movement. When the turntable is rotated from the stowed position with the booms to either side of or in front of the chassis, the direction of control movement does not correspond to the direction of chassis movement. Also, the effects of sudden turns or stops on occupants are exaggerated and more turning space is required. Avoid driving in these configurations. Before driving, make sure the drive range switch is set where you want it. Use the low speed if driving very close to other objects, on ramps, and in other similarly demanding situations. Also, if a power cord is plugged into the power input connector for the outlet on the platform, unplug it before moving the machine. The drive joystick controls forward and reverse motion and steers the machine. Pushing the joystick forward causes the machine to move forward. Pulling it toward you makes the machine move in reverse. Models TB80FA and TB85J offer multiple steering modes. Steering mode is chosen by selecting 4-wheel coordinated, 2-wheel, or crab with the steer mode switch on the upper controls. In the 4-wheel coordinated mode, the rear wheels turn in the opposite direction from the way the front wheels turn, as shown here. This enables making very tight radius turns with minimal chassis movement in the direction of the turn. The 4-wheel coordinated mode is very useful in fine positioning moves. The TB80FA and TB85J are also capable of crab steering. The action of the wheels is shown here. Front and rear wheels all turn in the steer direction, allowing the machine to crab sideways. Again, this is very useful in making positioning adjustments. On most machines, and in the 2-wheel steering mode on models TB80 and TB85J, the front wheels are the steer wheels. Moving the joystick to the right steers them to the right, and moving it to the left steers left. The color-coded arrows on the control panel correspond to color-coded arrows on the chassis that also indicate which direction the chassis will move. You can move forward or in reverse and steer at the same time. On TB80 and TB85J machines, the wheels will steer only when the drive joystick is in the forward or reverse drive position. The drive speed is proportional to the joystick position. The farther the joystick is moved, the faster the travel speed, within limits determined by the drive range chosen. Maximum speed is about 3 miles per hour. To stop the machine, return the joystick to the center position. The wheels will stay where you set them if you don't return them back to a neutral position. You could execute a more sudden emergency stop by removing your foot from the foot switch. The controls on the upper control panel for boom extension, jib boom control, and platform rotation and level work identically to the lower panel controls we demonstrated. However, on the upper control panel, raising and lowering the boom and turntable rotation are controlled by a second joystick. The functions are the same as on the lower control panel. When you push the main boom control joystick forward, the boom raises. When you pull the controller back, the boom lowers. Moving the boom joystick left causes the turntable to rotate clockwise. Moving it right rotates the turntable counterclockwise. It is best to start boom functions with the speed knob set on slow. Always remain alert and look in the direction of movement. When the machine will be left in one position for an extended period, you can turn off the engine to conserve fuel, then restart it when you need to drive or execute boom movements again. Do not operate the aerial platform from trucks, trailers, railway cars, floating vessels, scaffolds, or similar equipment unless the application is approved in writing by Snorkel. Take care to prevent rope, electrical cords, and hoses, etc. from becoming caught in or on the aerial platform. If the platform or boom becomes caught on an adjacent structure or other obstacle and is prevented from normal motion, reverse the control to free the platform. If control reversal does not free the platform, evacuate the platform before attempting to free it. Do not use the aerial platform as a crane, hoist, jack, or for any purpose other than to position personnel, tools, and materials. The operator of a Snorkel aerial platform must know how to perform 3 emergency functions: emergency stop, emergency power, and emergency lowering. The 2 emergency stop switches provide a fast way to manually turn the main power off. Remember, they must be reset before the engine can be started again. The emergency power system provides a battery-powered backup hydraulic system to lower and stow the machine if the main power system fails. There are emergency power switches on both control panels. To run either one, the start switch must be set to on. The battery disconnect switch must be in the on position. The control selector switch must be set to the control panel you are using, and the emergency stop switch must be pulled outward. Then you can operate the machine functions using the same switches you would use under full power. The movement will be slow and may have long lag times. The length of time the emergency pump can be operated depends on battery capacity. Emergency lowering, sometimes called emergency bleed down, is possible with most Snorkel aerial platforms. This method lowers the boom only. The knobs that allow this are at the base of the lift cylinder. See your manual for the exact location. Caution: this is a non-powered lowering only operation. Be careful not to lower the platform or booms onto electrical wires, people, or other obstructions. Never attempt to open an emergency bleed-down valve from inside the turntable. Turn the emergency lowering knob that operates the bleed-down valve. You can control the rate of boom descent with the knob, and can stop the lowering by closing the valve again. However, you will not be able to raise the boom by this method, and you will not be able to raise it once power is restored until the valve is closed. When the boom has completely lowered, close the valve. The aerial platform may be towed at slow speeds using the optional tow kit. Refer to the operator's manual for details of using the towing kit if your machine has this option. To prevent unauthorized use and damage, properly stow the aerial platform at the end of each workday. It must also be properly stowed while transporting. If the engine is hot, set the throttle to low and let the engine idle for 5 minutes to cool down. Center and retract the booms and place them in one of these approved stowing and transport positions. Turn off the start switch. If there is a cover on the upper control panel, close it. At the lower control panel, the red cover needs to be closed or the button needs to be pushed inward. Turn the start switch off and remove the key. Turn the battery disconnect switch to off. Close and latch all doors, covers, and hatches. It is very important that the transport vehicle and ramps are rated to support the machine's weight. Verify capacity before attempting to transport the machine. Drive the machine onto the transport vehicle if the approach ramp incline is within the grade capability of the machine. Remove all objects from the work platform and safely position the boom. Then, drive to the base of the ramp and get lined up perfectly with the ramp. Rotate the turntable so you can see the front wheels as you drive up the ramp. The machine may also be winched or hoisted onto the transport vehicle. Line the vehicle up perfectly with the ramp and attach the winch to the tie-down lugs on the front of the aerial platform chassis. Winching, like towing, requires that the wheel hub disconnect plates be removed and turned over. On most machines, this involves removing 2 bolts, turning the plate over, and reinstalling the bolts. But remember, this process disables the brakes, and at this point, the machine is free to roll. It is also possible to hoist the machine with a lifting device of sufficient capacity. The chains or straps are attached to the lifting lugs. See your operator's manual for details. Never run the sling cable itself through the lifting lugs, and make sure spreader bars are used to keep the chains, straps, or cables from contacting the turntable or booms. When securing the machine on the vehicle, chuck the wheels and raise the main boom about 1 foot. Use wire ties to fasten the platform gate to the guardrails and to fasten the foot switch to the platform floor. Use a nylon strap to securely fasten the platform against the wood block. Otherwise, the directions are the same as for stowing. This concludes the video training module on safe operation of Snorkel TB series aerial platforms. Before operating any aerial platform, new operators should thoroughly read the operator's manual, paying close attention to the danger, warning, and caution warnings throughout, and to details of procedures you may not yet fully understand. All new operators should also have hands-on training supervised by a qualified trainer. You'll find your Snorkel aerial platform to be versatile and easy to use, and a wonderful tool to help you get the job done efficiently and safely.